Chapter 33 Calamity, Neo-Titans. Helplessly reeling to Toya's aid is an even younger Omanu. Much younger.
Toya!
The little one is afraid to grab hold of and embrace the unnerved Alpha. Toya instantly stalls his trepidation, recognizing with a heart-shattering familiarity the innocent and unripe voice.
Oni! I told you to wait where you were!
The dispirited anguish in his cry implies to me that Oni is his younger sibling. May every curse fall upon you, Tiamatu. How can you justify any of this? You cannot explain away these atrocities. You cannot wash these blemishes from your conscience with your intentions as the soap. The grime of it all is much too thick for such disregard. Nor can you deem those who are heart-stricken as necessary tragedies for your sick crusade. How can you pay such a toll as this? How can you believe that for the better of mortals it is better that mortals are all in all rid from the realms when the cost of achieving this end is by the means of this crestfallen nature?
Come, child. I will not turn you away.
Tiamatu kneels down and gestures for Oni to hug him.
No! No! Oni, do not listen to him!
Toya's pleas evolve into an ugly scrounging that compels me to look away. But I do not. I shall not. Driven by the stilling of their shudder, setting their hearts and feet ablaze, multiple packs rush in to rescue the boy from all angles. Spears, arrows, fireballs, liquid whips, acidic swords, falling hammers, cannons of gale, and all of the elements pertaining to commands are thrust upon and about the curtsied immortal. In the nucleus of the fracas, one wolf activates command that seems to have augmented his speed tremendously. The blur in his stride slightly bends the wake of his trail. In contempt of the chaos of the barrage, Tiamatu's scowl is fixated solely upon him. He has assessed him to be the sole threat, if ever he could possibly feel threatened. The rapid placements of his steps mimic the clattering of a nimble stampede. He closes in on the child, reaching for his hand as the assault of the other wolves soar above and beside him, but these, too, he soon surpasses in speed. Through his frosty aura, Tiamatu constructs an exigent glacier, densely layered which encapsulates him, Toya, and Oni. The speedy wolf is scarcely able to slip in, whilst the charged fusillade collides with the inert icy fortress. I adjust my Draken's eye view to peer directly overhead. The walls of the iceberg are high, but there is no roof. Here I can see that Tiamatu has already subdued the intruding wolf. His chain, wrapped around his throat, extended and pinning him against the frigid walls without effort. Oni is weeping in his blinded brother's arms. Never before have I bore witness to a destitute Alpha. The highest rank a warrior can wear has come to mean nothing in the face of this archaic enemy. Generations of honing our mastering our arts and defending our peace has amounted to something akin to a child's game for Tiamatu.
Do not look away, Oni.
Tiamatu instructs the sobbing youth whilst he strangles his victim, tightening the chain evermore.
This, too, is a form of suffering that occurs with or without my involvement. To be strangled by hand, chain, smoke, or water means little difference in the end. The agony of suffocation, the yearning for what is taken for granted more than anything, including food, water, and shelter. Do you know what that is, boy?
Air.
The little one answers, unresolved and trembling.
That's right.
Tiamatu callously responds, snapping the infiltrator's neck. Oni shrieks in horror as his older brother tries to shield him using his sense of touch alone, patting him everywhere in search of his horrified stare. Outside of that frozen chamber of torture, the remaining wolves fight to thaw the high walls. They know not that it is without a ceiling. The pale god responds to their ruckus by erupting thorns of ice through its surface, fatally impaling most of them and deterring the rest from their barrage. Tiamatu approaches the cowering siblings with his arms wide. He forcefully embraces the both of them. They struggle fruitlessly to escape his cruel, rejected affection, but he is much too strong. Pull as they might, squirm as they will, It is all futile. By the faint refraction through the iceberg, the wolves watch as the youngest of them, their superior as well as their minor, submits to the cold of Tiamatu's cradle. He clings to his lifeless younger brother, who he has refused to die before. Toya could not bear to let his innocent sibling pass alone. And now that he has made certain of his little brother's departure, trembling by the cold and led forth by it, he follows him to the afterlife. I carry a painful regret and a blistering guilt to have underestimated his maturity. May you, Toya, and your little brother find peace wheresoever it is that you go. The anger that I have been tirelessly cultivating, that same wrath which I subdued adrift the waters of the Uman, has been reignited. This is, however, a novel, or rather a transformed temper from what I have brewed before. To be infuriated for the sake of the defenseless is not the same as my selfishly fueled madness of betrayal. This one not only invigorates my will, but it pains me. It pains me so long as I do not treat it, and the only way that I know how to do that is the only cure, the sole remedy. I must, and I shall put an end to Tiamatu. No matter the cost, no matter the trial, he must be chastised. He shall be punished.
Witness, all inhabitants of Omar, lend me your minds, for this moment is filled with ancient lessons.
The god speaks with fervor, as now the entire world can hear him once again.
Calamity befalls those who taunt its becoming, believing it unlikely. The burden of stewardship is then delegated to those who warned of her validity.
He continues,
And ought the bell ringers waste their days vainly convincing the masses, they will have had no moments for themselves to become prepared and rehearsed.
that quote. Once more it arises, now for the first time outside of my own thoughts and for once in its fullness. It was not Fasima who conjured these words. It was Tiamatu, and he is promoting them once more. He goes on.
Your history speaks to me. It speaks of Calamity. I brought her before. I bring her again. Your willful ignorance of the warnings laid before you since the days of my defeat has served you poorly. You've neglected a problem from both the past and the future and colored me as myth. Now, look as the non-believers cower and those who believed confront me. Ought you have taken the warning seriously? Ought you have questioned your own dubiety? You would all have known my name as true, and you would have feared it enough to organize against it. You may have even found Parias incarnate and did better to prepare him for my resealing. Do you understand now? Even with the proper measures set in place to contain suffering, you will ultimately and always fail, for it never cedes and it never tires. It is with me and with you. The cure is in my hand. You need only accept its conveyance. Hear me. I am Tiamatu, the pale god of suffering, and what I deliver is imminence.
The immortal lifts his chin high and looks up, squinting at the sky. This time he is not staring at Ara. It is almost as though he is staring at me. Or rather, staring at my view of him. He knows that I am watching. Tiamatu directs his attention to the west. He knows that I am coming. Aiming his palm towards my orientation, he launches another chain which bursts through the glacier without hindrance. Tracing its flight by my Draking vision, I watch as he drives it through the land, air, and water with no discretion and without prejudice to its medium of travel or the structure of any obstacle in its resolute path. The velocity of the dark metal is comparable to my full speed at stage 2 of my mimic Draking transformation. At this rate, coupled with my haste towards it, the chain ought to reach me within a couple of hours. About 500 km ahead, over the mountains we had initially circumvented, I see the true target of the slaving lynx. Soaring through the sky on a slab of marble and stone is my betrayer. He wasted no time getting a considerable head start on me. Perhaps I was wallowing for longer than I had surmised. From out of the thin air of unpredictability, Saba brings himself to an abrupt halt. The black alloy is in his view. With his arms at wingspan, he embraces its collision with his welcoming and treacherous heart. The chain wraps around his pumping organ, imbuing an inky substance into those roads that carry his blood and into the arteries of the rogue Tamasu. His unnatural squirming, jolts of animation, and spasms of the muscle make witnessing this detestable phenomenon difficult to bear. Veins of dark lightning branch and distend upon the surface of his skin, which turns nearly as pale as Tiamatu's. In a matter of moments, the wicked interaction comes to a finish, and Saba draws the chain from within him, dropping it far below into the sloping gaps of the mountains. It seems that Tiamatu has detached his end as well. The flesh wound fizzes and seals itself by a forbidden and dark magic parted to Saba by the pale god. My betrayer has been transformed once again, only this time not through his own merit, faculty, and accomplishment. Albeit, the way he invited the malignant metal in implies that leastwise this was of his own volition. And thus, it confirms further that Saba has been collaborating with Tiamatu all along. My old friend turns and faces me. It feels as though the hundreds of kilama of space in between us are set to crumble under the pressure of this suspense. I understand very well now. This will be the last time we meet, Saba. And I shall kill you, for you do not know what it is you have done. Or worse, you do, and you did thus regardless. It has not been a full day since you have aided Tiamatu's escape, and he has already murdered and tortured hundreds, possibly thousands. You will pay a preeminent price, the utmost fare, for your self-parcel to the land of the dead. I shall make certain of this, even if I have to convince the very heavens of it. A thin, salty stream paves its path, trickling down to the corners of my lips. In my face I tell of an inevitable morning. But in my stance, I hold the reason for its inevitability. It is as though I have come to kill my own brother. My right fist spews a spectral flame, chaotic yet controlled. I morph the cosmic blaze into my star eater. The spiked ball dangles down and sways. Engulfed by emotion and obligation, I am prepared to do what must be done. Saba. By greed, corruption, and loneliness. Loneliness because he is truly consumed by it. He has severed any and all ties to him. He has traded them for a power that shall be short-lived. This loneliness is so deep that it devours any light or voice that attempts to reach its base wherein he now resides. This is what I must quell in you, Saba. I will touch down and annihilate this emptiness, but I cannot forgive you, and thus you must be annihilated along with it. Your association with it, your vindication of it, your pardoning it as a prerequisite to your ends, it all must be vanquished. It makes me sick with ire. I trusted you even when I did not trust you. I bled for you, though we do not share blood. I weighed you heavier than my ilk when you spoke light of them. You brought me to the peak of the world just to push me from its ledge. And still, I have my reservations about killing you. Mark my words and know my heart. These reservations shall be abandoned, here and now, forevermore and always. My rage, flail in hand, trumps my sadness, more so now that I cannot sense a shred of regret in him. He waited here, motionless and without feeling. He lingered for nearly the span of the day for my arrival. His anticipation is one of calculation. I, too, refuse to come unprepared. Against my knowledge that time is not on my side, I limited my speed as to preserve I will need it for what nears commencement. With his dense armor already equipped, floating upon a slab of mixed ore, and his freshly granted power at hand, he remained here confidently. When I appeared, we faced one another, I hovering slightly above him. Nothing was said. It has been several minutes, and we have yet to speak. There is no need. What's more, neither of us will act first. Right now it is our eyes alone that do the talking. Our peering clashes in a corrosive and bitter animus. The smeared sky, black and green, sits still over the jagged peaks sprawled below us. The sparse vegetation lining the base and beyond has faded into a dull gray. Without Sa, Oma has lost most of her once captivating color. As a sickened maiden, she mourns her missing lover who would visit her by the day. The romance now is nothing if not forbidden.
You could have had a more suitable final resting place back at sea, Umani.
His shedding of my name from our once entangled and heartily fought-for familiarity is more of an indicator that this will be our last bout than the very threat itself. For him, it'd be less of a burden if this was impersonal. I understand fully. How cowardly of the proud warrior Saba. Now I am just another trophy head in his dead eyes. So, we're no longer on a basis of amity. Has my name left a sour taste in your mouth, Saba? I pose it as a question, yet it is obvious what his answer will entail.
Makes killing you much easier.
As I thought. A warrior before all else, even a friend. My heart replies in agony, and I cast it into the fire.
Abandon everything between and behind us. Fight me now as you would as though we met for the first time in war. Anything less will be an insult and will result in your immediate death. I will not hesitate.
Saba's words cut deep. You speak of insults. Is betrayal not... I restrain myself, for his countenance foretells plainly what his response would be. No matter what I say, I shall receive no justification or closure for his actions. It is as it is. My shoulders drop from my exhale and rise again with my eyes anew. I flail my Star Eater at him, but Saba shoots into the maze of mountains below. I pursue him into the long and serrated crevices. Behind him, he shuts the path between us as I trace his flight. He now moves mountains with ease, such as to be expected. No Tamas can resist a gift of power. Saba said thus himself. That is their one and only goal. I ought to have weighed this against my judgment of him. The ranges move about all around me, juggling and reforming the maze. He's attempting to confuse me. My track command, even at this stage, cannot detect him. There is not enough natural left in the environment as a consequence of Sa's long expulsion. Thus I also cannot rely on tracking him by Jai's methods. What's worse, even from above, my Draken's eye view will not descry the cobbled fighter apart from the twisting and vaulting crags. Erupting from my left, bursting forth from behind a wall of stone is Saba's ore-clad fist. Regrettably for him, my reflexes have vastly improved at this phase of my Drakenhood. I am able to slip under the strike and grab hold of his lead arm. I pull the rest of his frame from his ambushing cave and flip-toss him onto the ground of the protruding ledge. As the very foremost of him, by a single digit alone, meets his impact, he vibrates it into a silky sand, softening the slam. The fine rubble flies about in an explosive manner, nearly filling the unnaturally crafted cavern. Before the sand can fall back to whence it came, he solidifies those grains around me, giving him a chance to roll away and leap back onto his feet. He commands vibrations that travel and transit between media more aptly than ever before. Adopting my weightless command, I reduce the hardened plume around me to the likes of a brittle clay and shatter it. He's at an advantage so long as we fight here. Realizing this, I fly back towards the sky. Saba attempts to shut me in, but I am just swift enough to slip through the clamping crack. I wait for him to join me, though, as I anticipated, he does not, nor does he plan to. I do not have time for this, Saba! I could show you no mercy! I yelled to the peaks below. Command! Line of fire! The cosmos themselves would be in awe as I burst the belly of my astral cloud and it rains down hundreds of arrows, glistening with the essence of the celestial bodies, roaring in their multitude with the raucousness of heavenly beasts, trampling the rugged peaks. The countless bangs rupture the mighty mountains, blasting giant debris Kalama away whilst dwindling less fortunate stones to mere dust and rubble. What remains of the great crests is a flat valley of dust enclosed and insulated from the rest of the world by those circling ranges that were situated outside of the blast's radius. At the base of the once irregular crags is a dome of singed rock. He was able to defend himself. The dome fissures open and Saba re-emerges. Only the slit of his pale purple brows and his dark orange eyes are visible through his stony helmet. The rest of his body has no weaknesses. There exists no space between the plates of his compact rocky shell, it being denser even than the Alps themselves. Saba stomps his feet rhythmically into a warrior's dance, dictating small spheres of Oma, roughly the size of his fist, to be launched at me with each step. The barrage is unlike Hakor's, but perfected and polished by the way of his given ability and its supernatural heightening. Hakor could only do thus because his cave was living and responded to his actions. Saba, however, can do such things anywhere he pleases. The pace quickens, and before I can adjust, there's nearly no space in between the storming rate of the spheres for me to properly evade them. One stone pummels my abdomen and another my lower ribs, yet I am miraculously able to elude the rest of his continuous and rising hail. As I am preoccupied avoiding the tail of his granular salvo, Saba initiates a flank to my right. He is unaware of my Draken's eye view, and I will use this to my advantage. I shall not react to his ambush until the last moment. I imitate an act of concern, as though I lost him in the fray. He is above me now, traversing the skies without the slab of pulled granite and flies by floating his armor alone. He approaches closer. Closer. Nearly there. At the final feasible second, I hover backwards just enough to avert his diving soles and intrude his chin to the brunt of my knee. The dense metal of his armor and the hard scales of my skin produce a chaotic spark upon impression. He recovers quicker than I expect and slides his elbow from the moon and down my face, thinly slicing my forehead as I scarcely evade the blow. I respond with a powerful spinning kick to his midsection. Though fruitful, he shuns the shock as he made no attempts to block or avoid it, and instead fires a straight punch into my solar plexus. I, too, reject the pang and do not furnish him with the satisfaction of a wince. From here, we exchange blows. Some land with a telling impact, others are deterred. We engage in such swift motions that my Draken's eye view can see nothing from above, save the violent flickers, sparks, and flares from our abrasive collisions. In terms of agility and strength, I've got him beat. His advantages lie in his durability and defense. Hand to hand, we are nearly equally matched, and at range it is the same. Blow for blow, strike for strike, our scuffle has landed us back onto the ground, fixed in place by the interlocking of our hands, both unstirred and inflamed. Neither of our hubris will yield to the other. Both he and I refuse to be the first to back down or give way. Just as I am gaining the upper hand, two silhouettes made of the very rocks below us spew into a dusty spectacle of creation. Swiftly, they form into clones of Saba himself and join in on the battle. They are not as agile, but they definitely provide enough distraction to give Saba the leverage he seeks. I release our grapple, block and evade what I may, but the hits are pouring in. One to my right rib, which is already bruised from the stones. Another to my left temple, two to my stomach, and my knees begin to buckle. Absent of hesitation, as though the act of a predator, the weakness of my buckling is exploited and one of the clones sends me to the dirt with a sweeping low kick. Saba raises both of his hands high into the air, funneling his dirt-forged clones and a spring of water from an underground reservoir into a massive cemented hammer. He brings it crashing with a wraith technique. Using my mask command, curtailing wings, and crossing arms as 3 layers of protection and 3 degrees of separation, I swiftly contract into a shielded cocoon. Regardless of my channeling a substantial and consistent amount of into the mask, it cracks and collapses to Saba's mighty pressure. My wings absorbed the remaining force, but not without damage. Another swing of similar magnitude, and I will, without doubt, be made immobile in the sky. That would lend him the sole privilege of organizing higher ground tactics and would surely ruin my odds of victory and survival. Behind the veil of my Drakeen appendages, I produce my Star Eater in secret. Quickly unfolding myself from my cocoon, I flick the cosmic banger into his chest before he can fully wind up for another pummeling thrash. The detonation sends him skipping across the terrain, but he makes haste to reclaim inertia by erecting a hand of dirt to catch him and nonchalantly placing him back onto his feet. I soar to meet him. Do tell! How is it that you manage to continually astonish me, even after our prolonged and eventful journey together? I sternly ask him, hinting an inkling of smugness within the inquiry.
Glare into your own reflection before you mock, lizard.
The contempt in his voice is material.
We are not so different. Neither of our peak powers are derived by our own merit. We reached out to the heavens for what we can do now, say and be. Do not doubt or be ashamed of it. We can attain the highest caliber of excellence. We are at the doorstep of immortality. We simply need to turn the handle and pass through. We can be anything. We can have anything. This is the only path to the pinnacle of perfection and power. This unbelievably rare opportunity to become gods is attainable to us, O Mani.
Passion engulfs him and drips from the corners of his maw and into an ardent salivation. I care not to ask him how it is that he deduces that immortality can be achieved. It matters not. You think I'd ever chance to realign with you after what you've done? I scoff at him.
I wasn't offering,
he coldly replies.
In fact, there's no space for any more than one god.
What of Tiamatu? I ridicule him and cannot help but to chuckle at my quip. Certainly he does not mean to transcend him.
As I said, there will be only one god.
With one arm stretched from his side, fingers wavering, he pulls and twists sound and wind into his sonic blade. Its generation twirls the air around us violently, disrupting a radius greater than that of a small tornado. As the blade finishes its mold, the winds come to a calm. There it is. His sword of noise and gale. It is more pronounced than it was before. Thus he has sacrificed its discrepancy for further power. It is now more visible and hence simpler to follow, but also many degrees more lethal. I release the slack of my Star Eater in preparation. Light versus sound, illumination versus vibration, knowledge versus action. The philosophy of our battle forces my attention to it. I cannot delve deep, not now, not during. Yet, as I can perceive with two sights in this form, I can also process my thoughts as though I have two minds. What a strange sensation, and I haven't noticed until this moment. It feels as natural as my wings, and they as my arms. For me, by me, and in me, I have an inner cognition paired with an external observer. A thin blanket of slippery clouds gradually seeps Oz luminescence upon the battlefield. We dash into action. Saba prepares a downward slice from high, and I an upward thrash from below. He feigns his blow and pivots to his right. I miss my strike. Saba transitions to a lateral slash. In rapid retaliation, I contract and redirect the cosmic chains of my Star Eater back towards my assailant, while shielding myself from his strike with my wings. The sonic boom of his swing rips through the inside of my feeble block, and then through my frame, disturbing and madly fluctuating my organs. The Star Eater connects for a second time with his occasion generating greater force than the last, flaring a furious flash fire at his helm. We both discharge into opposite directions, hurtling and fumbling far across the newly mapped plateau as thrown rag dolls would, and into the remnants mountains that still stand. Our positions directly diametric to one another. I am able to follow Saba's trajectory from my heightened sight. Ah! I groan from the pain now settling in. He has tangled and jumbled my organs and fractured my left wing. Dark blood runs from my nostrils and out the rims of my lips and ears. I cough the excess of it onto my chest as I regain my footing. Saba stumbles as he rises, failing and falling back first onto the ground. He lifts himself again, this time employing pillars of Oma to do thus. He can scarcely cling to his blade, and half of his helm has been eradicated. The solar burns have taken his sight in that eye and melted the meat of his cheek and lip, exposing his blazed fangs. His left shoulder suffered a similar fate. Saba nullifies the sword and takes a deeply rooted breath. He begins hurling stones from stomping into Oma once more. A tired technique. From my analysis, maintaining his supremely dense armor whilst simultaneously upholding his sound-bending blade was the extent of what he could manage. His ranged capacity is non-existent so long as his sword of wind is equipped. If I am correct in my presumption, then I must shut the gap whilst he is determined to engage in long-distance combat and his sword is no longer drawn. Limping, then running, twirling, jumping, rolling and sliding my way through the arid fray, I pull my astral bow from within the depths of my and begin releasing smaller arrows in bursts of 3 toward the irate Saba, who continues to up the pace in spite of his agony. As the first arrow nears its target, a contour of liquefied dirt and mud rushes to intercept it from below. It successfully contains the detonation within itself. 2 more erupt, and he does the same for the remaining arrows.
You haven't been paying attention, Omani!
He's amplifying his voice as he did back then with the gladiatorial announcement.
Did you happen to miss the spring of water beneath us earlier?
I do not pause to reflect in fear of a diversion. What do you take me for? Yes, I saw it! I shout back, masking my musing in a false confidence without halting my advance. A malicious grin surfaces upon his half-burned and battered face.
I've been busy.
He laughs and shoots his palms face first into the sky, whilst exposing his heels and digging them into the new valley without removing the vamps or toe caps. A deep trembling ensues. It rumbles quickly at first, and now it has slowed to an echoing series of throbs. The ground, mountains, and everything atop them wave back and forth as though they were on the brink of losing their solidity. Anything I stand on sinks me into it and grabs hold of my charge. The center of the newly carved high plains, which is where I stand, bursts into a mud flash, spewing me and everything around me riotously, thousands of armor into the air. Trees and roots, stones and dirt, fossils and insects all pummel me 100 times over as I have no power to fight the mighty spiraling current. It twists into a violent vortex, ripping at me as it pulls me higher and higher. I shudder between the waking world and the blackness of the abyss, as does my Draken's eye view. Saba captures the eruption at its utmost peak and freezes it in time, re-solidifying it the moment it spits me up and out. I crash land at the top of the structure. I may only watch from my blurring sky vision as he rushes over to me. My body will not do as I command it. Saba launches a thrashing kick to my jaw as I attempt to rise, stunting my already lame ascension.
For a moment there, I thought perhaps you couldn't be killed,
he says, quietly, as though to hide from the world that I could be killed and that he would rather I had been invincible. He pulls and forms a jagged, unrefined spear from the cemented mud splash. He's breathing heavily. This is likely all that he can muster. His stamina is near drained. Am I looking up at the face of death? Is this his identity? Is this finally it? But everyone needs me. My friends, the captain, Jai, the capital, all of the Omani, Relindur and the Tamas, all of Oma needs me! I bring forth the only weapon that I have the to produce at the final second of the final moment of Saba's thrust. I cannot invoke my mace, nor my bow, and not even my splintered claws, but with a single astral arrow clenched at the shaft, I roll toward him, evading his piercing attack, and jam the arrow through an exposed portion of his rock-bound cleats and straight through his foot, pinning him where he stands. He grunts from the trauma and drops his weapon. I detonate the arrow, taking the full brunt of the explosion with Saba. I make certain to shield my face, but this may truly be the last drop of willpower and endurance that I possess. The blast lobs my frame, and I collapse back onto the surface of the halted mud rush, 20 or 30 armor from the explosion. Again, my vision is shuttering in and out, and my Draken's eye view has at last faded into a blind limbo. I struggle to stay awake. Alas, the allure of sleep conquers me by its absolute authority. No longer can I refuse its call.